Today we're going to be doing one of the most basic repairs and the one that you're going to have to do the most often as a machine knitter, and that's replacing your sponge bar. Some version of this can be found in every flatbed knitting machine, and they're all going to look pretty similar. So I'm going to be going over how you remove the unit from your machine, how you put the sponge into the metal bar, and how you replace it into your machine to make sure that your needles are tensioned in the correct way. Ideally, you're going to let the glue in this sponge bar set before you put it back into your machine. So although the repair is quite quick, you do want to let it set for a couple of hours, so you're going to need at least part of a day to do it. This repair only takes some pretty basic tools. You need some scissors, some washable water-based craft glue of some variety, some sort of alcohol or cleaning solvent, preferably isopropyl, a sponge bar that fits your knitting machine, check the description to see where there are some suppliers that might be near you, and a flathead screwdriver or some other sort of scraping device. To determine if a vintage machine needs a new sponge bar, you don't have to remove it to see what condition it's in. All you have to do is bring some of the needles forward and see how much bounce they have. Can you see how there's play in these needles? They move up and down. And they should stay completely pressed down against this edge. They shouldn't move at all. So in order to replace the one that's in here with a fresh one, we have to remove the sponge bar from the machine. We can do this from either end. I'm going to do it from this end here. What we're looking for is this little plastic tab here. This is the end of the sponge bar, and I'm going to either push it, or if I had enough space I could grab it and pull it this way. I don't, so I'm going to push it that way and remove it from the other side of the machine. I can just use my flathead screwdriver to do this, or any other sort of Phillips screwdriver. Even a pencil sometimes works. It depends on the size of the machine. So here I am pushing it with my screwdriver. Now I should have enough room to grab it from the other side. Here it's popped out the other side, so I can grab it and remove it. This may take some force. Here's a comparison between those two sponge bars. Here's the one I just pulled out of that vintage machine. You can see it's very flat. There's no real kind of bulk to it other than the metal bar itself. Here's a sponge bar I recently redid. You can see how much give this sponge is and how much further it rises up above the metal bar. When the sponge bar is new like this, it has enough give to hold those needles against this bottom plate here. So it sits inside of the machine with the sponge facing towards the floor. It's pushing down on the needles to hold them with tension against this rail here so that they can't bounce up and down like I showed you. This flat one doesn't have the tension that it needs because the sponge has been so compressed and worn down. Now, I've been told that people can take these little plastic caps off in order to remove old sponges. I have not had any luck with these vintage machines getting these plastic end caps off without shattering them. So instead, I just pull the old sponge out and leave this end cap in place. So I'm going to start by clipping this cloth strip. The sponges have a cloth strip on one side and just bare sponge on the other. You can see in these vintage machines, they often turn quite powdery and they're going to feel a little sticky or greasy. So that's where our screwdriver comes in. I'm going to scrape out all of this extra material and the adhesive underneath. Some of them will be easier than others. This one's actually coming out pretty cleanly. Now just clipping the cloth at the other end. If there's old adhesive and gunk left, I would just give it a quick wipe down and try to get as much out as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now we're going to take that craft glue that's water-based and water washable, and we're going to put it into the sponge bar to hold the sponge in place. I'm using a water-based glue because then next time it will be easier to wash it out than scraping it out manually like this. I'm just putting a healthy amount in here. It just needs to hold it until it gets into the machine safely. So now we take our sponge, lay it spongy side down, cloth side up, and press it into place in that glue. It's going to want to pop out. That's okay. I like to use chip clips in order to hold it in place just because they're long and flat. All right, now we got to deal with these ends. I'm just going to tape them down, and the reason I'm taping them is because I want them to be flush with this clip because it makes it easier to push it inside of the machine. Remember, we got to get it back inside there, so it needs to slip pretty easily, and I need to keep these ends down if we're going to do that. Okay, so I'm just laying it down so that it catches around the clip, and then wrap it tight. We don't want any ends sticking out that get caught when we put it back into the machine. It doesn't look the neatest, but it works to get that bar in place and it won't be visible from the outside. Repeat on the other end. Okay, I'm gonna set it to dry overnight just to make super sure no sticky glue gets into my machine when I put it back in. While I'm waiting, I'm also gonna print up a label. I'm gonna label the sponge bar with which machine it is and when I replaced it, so that when I go to swap it out, I'll know how long these things are lasting. This step is of course totally optional, but I find it's helpful, especially if this machine is going to somebody else. They know exactly when the last time was this was done. All right, next day the sponge bar has dried down. We can remove the clips and put it back into the machine where it belongs. So I'll remove the carriage so we can see what we're doing. I'm just unscrewing this and removing this bracket entirely and pushing the carriage off to the side. I'll also remove the accessory case. So critically, I'm going to be reinserting it in the same direction as I took it out. So the fabric points down towards the table, the metal bar towards the ceiling. And the job is that it wants to press the needles down up against this bed. So we want to make sure we're not sliding this underneath the needles and pushing them towards the ceiling. We want to be pushing them down towards the floor. So when you first start to push this in, you might meet with some resistance because it's hitting up against the needles, and you want to push them down into place so that the sponge bar can slide on top. And you may need to push them down all the way across. So I'm pushing down just a few needles and moving the sponge bar in with my other hand. You will feel some resistance. It should be tight. Now that the sponge bar is pushed in, you should be able to move the needles with a little bit of resistance. They shouldn't be super tight and they shouldn't just flop in and out. You can see if I put a needle there, it kind of stays there. This may feel a bit tight in the beginning, but after you've worked the machine for a project or two, it should loosen up a little bit and the needles will slide smoothly. Now you're ready to put your carriage back on and start knitting.